I'm your host, Kevin Bemmel, and we are here every Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific time. That's 1 p.m. on the East Coast, with an hour in for Central and an hour in from each side for Central and Mountain Time. And we talk about all things related to trusts, estates, probates, both and estate planning, both from the standpoint of taking care of your own matters in that regard, and also being a professional who helps people in those areas, whether you're a lawyer, an accountant, a financial services professional, a real estate person, or like me, a professional fiduciary or trust company. So today I'm going to talk about how to get business from a professional fiduciary. So for those of you who are are serving people in the trusts and estates arena, or have a business where you think you'd do well in that area, I think it's a valid question. So if you're a regular watcher of the show, you may have been wondering, well, let's see, I've been watching you for a year. How do I get business from you, Kevin? So we're going to open up the curtains here and tell you how that works. So unlike other shows where I put together a PowerPoint, I didn't do that today. I'm just going to talk and share a few thoughts with you about how you might work with me, or someone else in my position. Now, in case you haven't seen some of my earlier shows, California is the only state that requires a license to be a trustee or an administrator. All the other states, there are other states that require what amounts to a professional fiduciary's license, but that's in cases where the fiduciary is acting as a conservator or a guardian. Now, California requires a license in those areas as well, but it's the only state that adds on top of that being a trustee and an administrator. And by the way, if you are a relative of the decedent, so first of all, and you're only handling that one estate, you're not required to be licensed. A license is required only for doing two or more, and where you weren't appointed, for example, as an executor in a will. So, having said that, okay, got a message here. Someone wants to promote my show. So when I look at the people that I do business with, or that I anticipate doing business with, they share certain traits. Number one, they are experts in their field. Okay, so if you're a lawyer, an accountant, a real estate agent, you know your field well. Now, that's not to say that you have to have been in it necessarily a long time. Those two aren't equivalent. Okay, so someone who's only been in the field for a couple of years may have very, very deep knowledge of the field because they've been very active. They've studied a lot. They've taken a lot of classes, and they've been involved in a lot of matters or transactions. So I'm not so concerned with how long you've been in the field as I am with your experience, the depth of your knowledge, especially as it relates to probate and trust matters. Now, it's all good and well to be a real estate agent and to have done a lot of transactions as a real estate agent. That alone, however, doesn't mean that you know the probate process. So the probate, the requirements for probates are pretty carefully lined out. And since the court has control over the sale of a property out of probate in many, if not most cases, that process has to be understood from the beginning. It's not something you learn along the way. Okay, and one of my good friends, Bill Gross, who has a probably the most watched show on probate matters. Bill is a probate real estate agent, and he learned probate real estate by going down to the courthouse in downtown Los Angeles and sitting there and watching probate matters being heard, getting to know probate attorneys, studying the process. It took him about a year to get to the point where he could justifiably call himself the probate expert, which is kind of what he goes by. Okay, so you can see, you say, wow, a year, that's a long time. Well, not really. I mean, if you're a professional and intending to, have a career in a particular area, I wouldn't say that taking a year to really understand it, really understand what it is you're going to be doing is a particularly large time commitment, especially when you consider what's at stake. So the average home price nationwide, I think, is around $400,000. So for most people, it's their most valuable piece of property. And so if you're going to be selling property out of probate, or representing that you know how to sell property out of probate, if you make a mistake, that can have very large financial consequences for the estate, for the heirs, for the person seeking to buy the property. All of these are the case. As well, if you're you're a lawyer, so understanding the probate code and all the requirements that are involved, understanding the legal process, all of that is a crucial component of being able to serve clients well. And as a professional fiduciary, okay, I'm reliant on you, if let's take the case of a lawyer, to make sure that the legal side is being handled properly. Okay. While I have a fair amount of legal knowledge, I started out my professional career as a law clerk. So, I've worked with attorneys for decades. My expertise is not in the law. Okay. My expertise is in trust and estate administration and the fiduciary duties that go with that. Okay, so when it comes to the intricacies of things like ex parte hearings, or of filing various petitions, okay, I'm going to be relying on you, the lawyer, to handle that properly. Now, I can go through my petition and all of that, and I do this, whenever I have a new case, and I go through it and make sure that it's reflecting properly what it is I'm declaring. Okay, but I'm not going through it to make sure it's formatted correctly, and and those kind of things, which can vary from court to court. Okay, so that kind of basic legal knowledge, pretty much all attorneys have. But then when it comes to working with the probate court itself, knowing the judges, knowing what they're looking for, knowing what they really mean when they say certain things, because judges are bound by ethical standards, by standards of conduct, and sometimes they want to say something that they can't, and so they'll say what they can, but there's an implication under that as to what they're really saying. Okay, so all of that, again, as a professional fiduciary, I'm relying on you to have that kind of knowledge and experience. Okay, so and that's number one is to be knowledgeable and experienced in the field, to really, to know, to be able to handle kind of your function within the process. Okay. Now that quickly leads to the next thing that I look for when deciding to do business with someone, and that is, what kind of a team member are they? Okay, estate administration is a team sport. Okay, it absolutely is. And generally speaking, and I say this modestly, I'm the quarterback, to use a football metaphor. Okay, or I'm the pitcher, to use a baseball metaphor. Okay, let's see, I'd be the center halfback, I guess, if I were playing soccer. And so what I work to build is a collaborative team where everybody is doing what they do, and putting their eyes on the process and what's happening for the benefit of the estate, and of course for the benefit of the eventual heirs. That's what matters. That's what it is to be a fiduciary. Okay, I'm not interested in getting into sort of, territorial fights. Well, this is my thing to do. This is your things to do. This is your thing to do. I give input to lawyers, to accountants, and I encourage them to give input on what I'm doing as well. I think the worst thing we can do in the administration of an estate is assume that, any one individual has all the answers. Rarely is that the case. Okay, so if you're a trust and estate lawyer, you know a tremendous amount about trusts and estates, presumably. Okay, but you may not know as much about real estate. You may know real estate conveyancing and that kind of thing, but you may not have a whole lot of knowledge about property operations. So, for example, here in California, there are rent control ordinances in many cities. And if an estate has a house that is, part of its property, and that house was rented to a tenant, okay, the mere fact that the owner of the house has died doesn't necessarily mean that the tenant can be kicked out. Okay. Yes, the deceased owner's estate now becomes is now owned by, if you will, the estate. Okay. But that change of ownership does not necessarily terminate the lease, especially under a rent control jurisdiction. Okay, now, some rent control laws don't cover single family residences at all. Others do in certain circumstances, and others do in almost all circumstances. Okay, so that can impact how an estate is administrated, and how a property, may be sold. Okay, so when it comes to those kinds of issues, now I come from a real estate background, and so I'm much more aware of those kinds of issues than I have a friend who's a professional fiduciary. He comes from an accounting background. Okay, so he has a more in-depth knowledge of that part of the professional fiduciary world, and I have a more in-depth knowledge of the real estate and property side of the professional fiduciary world. Okay, and I call him about stuff, and he calls me about stuff, just to help each other out, as just professional courtesy, that kind of thing. Okay, and so when I'm working on a matter, whether I'm the team captain or not, and sometimes I won't be, sometimes the lawyer is the team captain, and that's fine. In order for that situation to work, though, the lawyer needs to respect my position as a professional fiduciary, meaning that they don't have the authority to dictate to me how a particular thing is handled. Okay. Now they can certainly advise me about how they think it should be handled. Okay. They can give me the legal constraints. Okay. But as I'm sure you're aware, there's the legal side of the matter, there's the practical side of the matter, and there's the moral side of the matter. And these all three need to be considered whenever we're dealing with a situation where people and emotions are involved. Okay. And certainly probate and trust administration, or probate and estate administration, is one of those areas. Okay. There's been a loss. Someone has died. Usually people are upset about that. Okay. And so, and by the way, not just the decedent's heirs. Okay. There can be other people involved, maybe friends of the decedent, maybe close friends of the decedent. They're all, there's a lot of emotion there, employees of the decedent. Okay. And all of that needs to be taken into account. Now, that doesn't mean that decisions are made based on emotion, but what it means is the way things are done should take these emotional, practical, sometimes even spiritual aspects into account, so that we're not exacerbating an already fraught situation. Okay. And that can be tough sometimes, because the heirs are driving to get this thing done, get the probate closed, and I understand that. That's perfectly legitimate. Okay. But at the same time, getting it closed isn't the sole consideration. Okay. Because, as you know, the old saying, act in haste, repent in leisure, right? So everything's got to be done correctly, especially if it's a probate administration where the court has oversight and even audit authority. Okay. So that's the second thing I'm looking for in someone that I'm working with and someone I'm considering giving business to is, are they going to be a good team member? Are they going to be collaborative? Are they going to be as open to input, receiving input, I should say, as they are to giving input? Are they typically, looking to issue orders, or do they want to discuss things and reach an agreement that's been, wherein all the various issues have been reviewed? So that's number two in the thing that I'm looking for. Number three that I'm looking for is, I want to build long-term, mutually beneficial relationships. And that's, I think, generally true of all professional fiduciaries. So it is so much easier to navigate this whole process when there are established relationships. People know each other, they know how they work, they know their strengths and weaknesses. Okay. And we all have them. Okay. If you're looking at me saying, well, I don't have any weaknesses, I'm with due respect, I'm suggesting you just don't know what they are. That's all. I certainly have my weaknesses. I do. Okay. I exhibited one of them on Friday. Okay. I get super, super annoyed at financial institutions that stonewall me. Okay. Whether it's as a customer or whether it's as a professional. And I'm not going to name any names, although I would really like to, because there's two that they've been on my, I don't want to use the word list, for quite a while now. And I can almost count on the fact that their people will be uncooperative. Okay. And I have to really hold myself in check whenever I have to deal with these two institutions. Okay. And on Friday, I sort of blasted something out at the attorney for one of the matters I'm working on, because of what one of them did. And he's like, gotcha. And, he knows this is a weak spot of mine. Okay. And look, he has his weak spots too. And we work together to back each other up. okay, to make sure that we are doing the proper job despite our weaknesses, okay? So to be able to work with people with whom we have established long-term relationships makes the whole process go better, and it's really to the benefit of the beneficiaries of the estate, okay? Because since we know how we work and all of that, there's fewer mistakes, there's less time with miscommunication, and they get a more comprehensive job, a more comprehensive view and solution to potential problems, because we can talk about these things more openly. We're not worried about protecting our turf. We're focused on doing the best job we can for the people to whom we're responsible. Okay, so people come to me with kind of a one-off thing. It's like, well, if you'll do this, I'll do this, and then kind of off we go. That's not who I'm looking to do business with. Okay, my philosophy since I started my first company back in the mid 1980s is it's harder to find a good client than it is a good piece of business. And so once I find a good client, I want to be able to develop that relationship, strengthen it, and figure out new ways to help that person out. And I feel the same way about the professionals that I work with. So I worked for many, many years with a trust and estate attorney by the name of Alan Cuttrow. I think Alan is retired now. He worked for a big law firm here in Los Angeles called Mitchell Silberberg. Alan was he was like the greatest lawyer to work with. Okay, and every time we got to work together, I loved it, because although I was when I started doing work with Alan, I didn't have a lot of experience in probate and estate matters. I had some, enough to justify him working with me. But he was, and he even at that time, he was very, very experienced. We could talk things over. He was open to listening to what I had to say. If he thought I made a mistake, he was candid in saying so, not in a harsh way. It's like, this doesn't look right, or are you sure this is how it should be? That kind of thing. And so I learned a lot working with him over the years, and still hold that memory as he's one of the people that like I said, I just loved working with him. And that kind of relationship is golden. And I hope it would be golden to you as well, because it makes it so much easier to pursue our various professions. So how do you then get to the point where these three things are going on? Okay. Well, number one, we talked about, how to get your knowledge. Number two, how do you like demonstrate you're an effective team member? Well, be an effective team member, and then it'll be evident in terms of how the introductions come, how other people talk about what it's like to work with you, okay? And how do you create an ongoing relationship? Just that. Value building relationships over making a one-off, transaction or something like that. So, if you're interested in doing business with me, the easiest way is to make an initial contact through LinkedIn. That's the one social media platform that I really put a lot of focus on, because it's a place where professionals can connect with each other and do business and learn about each other and such. I have a group called Trust and Estates Experts. So if you join that group, you have a forum there to show off your expertise. And by the way, I don't say show off in a negative way. I mean to demonstrate, to prove your bona fides. Okay. I don't think there's anything wrong in doing that. Quite to the contrary, I would encourage you to do that. Okay. You can also join my friend Bill. He has a Facebook group on probate matters. Look up Bill Gross and probate group or something like that. I don't recall the name of the group off the top of my head. But it's another wonderful place to share your expertise, your willingness to help. Okay. And how do you build a relationship? First of all, by introducing yourself. And then, look, I advise people all the time, fellow professionals, that is, pro bono. Okay. If someone calls me with a question about how this works or that works, I'm going to take 5, 10, 15 minutes to answer their question, to help them help a client. Okay. Maybe there's no immediate financial return to me. That's okay. That's okay. If we're building a long-term relationship, the money will come. Okay. What we need to be doing, especially in the beginning, is building that relationship. Okay. Getting to know how each other works. And that comes from periodic interactions. Okay. If you want to put me on your call me, once every 3 months list, okay, great. I mean, let's have a touch base conversation once every 3 months. Okay, I do that with quite a number of people. I should do it with more, frankly. I run out of time often. Okay, but it's my goal to touch base with people that I have relationships with at least once every 3 months. Now, some, of course, I speak to much more often. Some people I speak to almost daily. Others, not as often. So that's another good way to build that relationship. Okay, and if we are in complementary professions. Okay. And the ones that are most complementary for professional fiduciaries, at least like me, who do trust and estate and probate work, are trust and estate lawyers and financial and lawyers handling financial planning, accountants who are doing the same thing, trust and estate accountants in financial planning. Okay. Financial services professionals who get involved in financial planning, especially for trusts and estates. Okay, real estate people who specialize in trust and probate matters. And then there's a fifth group, I call it others, and there are several categories of others. You could be a valuation professional, an appraiser, for example, and you appraise property for trust, estate, and probate matters. Okay, you could be someone like my friend Hillary Cooper. Hillary has a business called Uncluttered, where when somebody passes away, she goes. She and her team will go into the house and they'll deal with the personal property, what's going to be done with it, inventorying it, whatever has to be done. Okay, so there's all those other people. You may be a notary public, maybe a mobile notary public. Okay, that's someone else that's potentially we could do business together. You could be a paralegal who specializes perhaps in drawing up living trusts. Okay, so all of those are potential professions that we would work together on a matter. Now, you might be involved in something that I didn't list, but you think there's a potential connection there. So feel free to reach out. Look, the worst thing that'll happen is we'll decide, no, there's probably not a good opportunity for us to do business together. So, but hey, good to know you, and we're kind of on each other's radar a little bit. And if something stray comes across where we can help each other out, we certainly will. Okay, but maybe there's again, you're in a profession that I didn't mention, and yet there is a good opportunity there. It's just not one that I've particularly focused on. Okay, so it all starts with making that first contact, and then getting to know each other, building that relationship, helping each other out, helping each other help our clients out, and then the money will follow. Okay, so that's how you do business with a professional fiduciary, at least one focused on trusts and estates and probates like me. Now, for someone who's dealing with guardianships and conservatorship matters, that's a little different. Maybe I'll talk about that in another episode down the road. But for now, I'm talking about the area that I deal in most frequently. So I thank you very much for tuning in today. Hope you found this useful. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific time is my show, Business Lessons from the Military. And I'm going to be talking about how you can empower your teammates so that they really feel invested in what you're doing in your business, in your company. Okay, the military has, and I'm going to use an example from naval aviation, is particularly good at this, I think. And so I invite you to tune in for that and see how and hear how you can adapt this practice to your business in a way that really will engage even the most junior people in your organization. And then on Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, my guest is Vaughn Marie Thomas. I'm in my social media posts, you'll see she's going to talk about going from a mil spouse to a civ spouse. Mil spouse is short for military spouse, and as you might have guessed, civ spouse is short for civilian spouse. And I think you will not only enjoy hearing Vanessa's story, but you will also learn a lot about how you can build your own success, whether you're someone in transition, not necessarily just from the military. Maybe you're coming out of college, maybe you're a mid-career professional. All of those, I think you will learn things from Vanessa. So I invite you to tune in on Wednesday. And that's all I have for you. That's it for today. So thanks again for tuning in, and signing off as I always do. Marie, darling, you are my belle. All the best.